Between the Bank and the Gutter, the official launch of author Louis Lee Singh's latest book. Tuesday 21st January at the Little Carib Theatre from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. Be a part of this memorable event. Copies will be on sale along with book signing.
Her voice has mesmerized us for years.
And now, in a rare treat for music fans,
Shakuntala and Friends in concert, featuring Shakuntala Jang Bahadur. Singing sensation Deval Chaitlal, brilliant musician Dr. Shivanan Maharaj, master flautist and saxophonist Narendra Maharaj, with music from Shiv Sangeet Orchestra. Shakuntala and Friends in concert.
Shakuntala,
WESN. Culture. It's a hell of a thing. We don't necessarily understand how important it is until we lack it. And then at times we feel it. A lack of symbology or symbols to rally behind, a lack of imagery to generate faith and confidence and trust and unity. And now we have updated one of our cultural icons, our coat of arms, which is interesting that to some extent it is an important part of our national identity, and yet, dare I say, we take on no one else's coat of arms really, except our own. And even then, to what extent did we really take it on? Was it really that important to us? Because a major change happened, and arguably, I'm not entirely sure if it made a significant enough of an impact throughout the population to warrant said change. Now, you could argue, well, sure, this was an important change. You might find so, but at the end of the day, what is the point of a national symbol if we cannot necessarily identify with it, if we don't rally around it, if it is not used to unify us? Then it's just a symbol that means what? Now, some individuals have responded to the change and to the images of the new coat of arms. Now, I assume this is what was passed, so I assume this is the coat of arms. And they have their issues, in part because of how the artwork was executed. One said it looked like hot doubles, one said it looked like a lollipop. Some people call out the fact that apparently the artist has no graphic designing knowledge or understanding of basic principles of design. And then, to some, there was the basic question of what was the point of taking out the ships? And of course, we will go into all of these long-winded debates about the importance of colonialism and symbology from those times, which were bad, and we should blah, blah, blah. And that's nice. That really is. But given the fact that we've reached a point where most people don't even know the names of the ships anymore, I'm not saying that the change shouldn't have been made. I'm just saying the effect of the change, I think we're overestimating. Because we've reached the point now where I wonder if we overestimate the importance of our national symbols. And ironically, it's more important what people could see sometimes than what it actually is, or what it represents. Because when I saw it, the first thing I thought is, why does it look like the steel pan is melting? And then I realized, oh, it's the two pan sticks. And there's a part of me that was like, to put the pan sticks like that seems very uninspiring, uninteresting, and To what extent was it even necessary to include the pan sticks when you could have just had the steel pan alone? Now, personally, I think that the steel pan is too large for the shield. You could have had the pan sticks underneath if the steel pan was smaller than X, or take it out entirely. Then there's the fact that it seems as though it doesn't match the rest of the coat of arms. It's like this is the 2024 part and everything else is the 19 whichever part. Way before current graphic designs tools existed, and in order to make iconography, you had to utilize different methods and different means. It doesn't seem to match the old style, which gives us a different type of image, to this new-ish looking pan. And to some extent, perhaps it's over-engineered. Now, I do agree replacing the ships with the steel pan. It's just the execution, I guess, it's debatable. And one of the things with national symbols and iconography is, in order to unite us, yeah, you can't please everybody, but to some extent you need to try and make it in such a way that people could rally behind it, could feel proud of it. If we already have people questioning the execution, and then they come back to, well, what was the point? And that's what questioning the execution does. It causes people to say, what was the point? And then they go on to question the cost of the change. Now, granted, if everything is going to be rolled out over a long period of time, so that we're not actually going to be changing our bills and our coat of arms and ministries and so forth, just for the sake of changing it to the new one, but when they naturally needs to be swapped out, whatever that means. Obviously, certain things like certain signage and stuff, you know, that's not gonna depreciate in any reasonable time frame. That might have to be swapped out immediately. But then not all has a cost, right? So the question is, to what extent are we going to be rushing to replace the images? How much is that going to cost? And at a time when we have a lot of indicators that we don't have money to just throw around, and somebody rightfully asked the question, did we need to do this right now? At a time when, you know, there's a whole thing about salaries still being negotiated for some people. Back in 2016, salary increases being negotiated in now 2025. Did we need to do this right now? Culture's a hell of a thing. One of the interesting, and perhaps this is, it doesn't seem to be connected, but I would argue that to some extent, take this example from a different perspective. Some stakeholders, Cultural Affairs Chairman of the Hindi Foundation, is blaming Chutney Soka Monarch competition for the demise of East Indian culture. Well, to some extent, it's similar to what goes on with the rest of Carnival. Commercialism kind of undercuts the traditional cultural aspects of what was there before, of the art forms, and our inability to properly support, potentially monetize, or promote the traditional, the truly rooted cultural aspects of our society is causing them to be kind of lost in the shuffle that is the commercial appeal of certain aspects of Carnival. Now, to what extent should East Indian culture be centered around Chutney Soka as a whole other kettle of fish, right? Because usually when we debate about traditional mass and the various, you know, characters and iconography of that, that's not TNT's entire culture that we're lamenting. We're just lamenting Carnival. But with regards to Chutney Soka being a cause, being to blame for the demise of East Indian culture, I would argue it's similar, right? To what extent are we're kind of blaming something when the reality is it's our own fault. for allowing certain aspects to fall by the wayside. Because at the end of the day, commercial appeal will go with what is making it in the popularity contest. And this is just to show how left to a society's own devices, without any sort of guidance, particularly education, and without reinforcement of the importance of our symbols, of our culture, left to our own devices, we will take the path of least resistance. We will take the path that will facilitate, on a practical level, what will engineer a visceral feeling of emotion that is tangible to us. And it's easier to do that when you have something that's mass appeal as opposed to something that people engage with less and less. And the coat of arms was one of those things. How many people really studied each note when they paid? How many people looked at the coat of arms beyond just that's the symbol of the government of Trinidad and Tobago? How many people really bothered to continue to show an appreciation of who we are and where we've come from? And then, of course, given that lack of appreciation, maybe it's understandable. Like now, the Hindi Foundation is lamenting the demise of Indian culture. The future of Indian culture. In a similar vein, we have to wonder about our course for our national future. More could be done, but where should it come from? Therein lies the question, right? One of the things that I'm jealous of the Americans, maybe to a lesser extent the British, but the Americans, you need to understand, they get it. National symbology, iconography, it unifies them in a way that, well, we think it's corny and cheesy and oh gosh, but when the rubber meets the road, when the you know what hits the fan, they have that to fall back on to ensure that they can come together and fight as one to move forward, to overcome whatever it is, whether it's towers going down, wildfires, destroying homes, hurricanes and flooding, and a war, whether it is supported or unsupported. Do we have that? Only when we make it to the World Cup. Sure, Michael Smollett, this is talking about a WESN, the content capital. It's almost like if we're kind of showing our youth with regards to being a country. But America ain't that old either. So what did they figure out that we didn't figure out? Maybe because they struggled for their freedom, whereas we eventually were given it, whether reluctantly or not, that's a whole other debate. What did we have to struggle for in Trinidad and Tobago? I don't know. Other Caribbean islands have had to struggle, at least once they became independent, they had to figure out their stuff on their own. And even to some extent before that, it was not life in the Caribbean was easy. But to some extent, we, as an independent nation, haven't had struggles. And maybe now, that's why we don't know what to do now that we're struggling. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll kick off today and this week's Daily Review. Stay tuned.
Simon's Musical Supplies Limited. We are the specialist in new and used musical instruments, carrying top brands like Yamaha, Pearl River pianos, vinyl and Sabian cymbals, Remo and Evans drumheads and Fender guitars, just to name a few. Also a wide assortment of music books, pan and accessories. At Simon's, we service what we sell. Trust the leader. Call us now at 625-6412 or visit us at 20 Board Street, Port of Spain. SM Group International Limited, your solutions partner for the latest innovations, brands and competent staff to meet your needs. We provide products and services in the following divisions: executive services, event rental and services, power and heavy equipment, construction and property management, food and beverage, aggregate and sales and distribution. Check out more on our products and services at www.smgrouptt.com. Contact us at 221-7445 or email at info@smgrouptt.com. We are SM Group International, your solutions partner.
The best for your baby is at thebesttoys.com. From the best strollers, car seats, baby carriers, high chairs, booster seats, rockers, jumpers and bouncers, walkers, baby blankets, feeding accessories, bathtubs. Visit us in store at Forces Flagship McLean. Shop online now at thebesttoys.com. Order via call or WhatsApp at 332-BABY. And remember, we have the best toys at the best prices.
Knowing how to tell authentic is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Find it, match it, search it. Step 1. Find the style number on the tag. Step 2. Match the style number inside the jersey with the number on the tag. Step 3. Search it. A quick Google search of the style number will verify the jersey is authentic when the search results match the jersey being searched. Don't be fooled by counterfeit jerseys. Before you buy, remember to find it, match it, search it.
Fan Zone, 2 locations nationwide: Center City Mall, Chaguanas and Movietown, Port of Spain. Nationwide delivery available.
I'm back here on talking about WSN, the content capital. First story I want to get to today. This is a bit of a mess. I'm not going to lie. It is a bit of a mess. The Police Complaints Authority is launching a probe into a fatal shooting in Beetham, which killed a bystander, but it wasn't as though the person was like in the vicinity of the area when a gunfight took place. In fact, there are conflicting reports with regard to the nature of the reasoning for the discharge of the officers, plural, singular, weapon, right? Now, essentially the victim was in a friend's home and was, at that point in time, they went to the kitchen, a bullet entered through the kitchen window and struck the victim in her head. Reports are that she died instantly. Now, the question is, who shot the bullet and to what extent was it done responsibly or recklessly? Because technically, yes, there is a world where that bullet was not necessarily shot recklessly. If it was shot by the police, depending on what it is, the details of the events and how they were unfolding happened at the time. The problem is, there's a debate by eyewitnesses. There are conflicting accounts by people who apparently were on the scene who say that there was no gunfight to then cause the police to have to shoot in the first place. One person even reporting that the police, well, I'm not entirely sure. The quote is, when they pulled up there, the man was already gone, it had nobody, and they just jump out shooting like mad people just to prove a point. Then apparently, according to this individual, one of the officers recognized that one of the bullets he discharged hit Ali. He started to scratch his head like he's going crazy. She claimed he was berated by his colleagues, who then turned their attention to her and other residents who were left frenzied by what transpired. They started to cuss everybody out in the house and threatened to shoot them. And then part of it is the family are upset over how the body was handled. She was pronounced dead. I do believe there's a good chance that she was already dead, but still, to some extent, it was treated like a piece of cargo almost. So therein lies the question. Now, to some extent, the Police Complaints Authority is not really an investigative body for criminal conduct, per se, if my understanding is correct. So, even if there was a gunfight, because eyewitness accounts are not always 100% accurate, right? It's just one of those things. That's why you have murder convictions being overturned by DNA. Of course, video camera evidence, when accurate, that is to say, clear, good resolution, etc., also very valuable to get to the truth. Sometimes witnesses speak in bad faith, sometimes their memory is just bad. And sometimes it's a combination of both. Their biases slip in and they think they're doing the right thing, or they want to think they're doing the right thing, and we get what we get. So, to what extent were the eyewitnesses, could we say that they are 100% accurate, that they know exactly what happened? Well, the obvious answer to that is we can't. But that doesn't mean that their general version of event is not necessarily correct or is not wrong. If there were criminal assailants, then the first step of making this a reasonable shooting, that is to say the discharge, not the eventual result, that is achieved. But there's still a lot of hoops to go through before the discharge of a police firearm that may have led to the death of an individual, or the engagement of a gunfight, whereas criminals, their bullets cause the death of a civilian. That and all is something that could be questioned, right? Because it would have to be a situation where we are in or around a residential neighborhood. Depending on the situation, arguably, police officers should not discharge their firearms willy-nilly within proximity to the public. They should potentially avoid getting into a gunfight within close proximity to the public if they could help it, and only return fire when fired upon. It all depends, right? It's a judgment call. Even what I said is a bit of an oversimplification. So they have to get through all over those hurdles to then say, was this gunfight justifiable or not? Sometimes they shoot at you, maybe you take cover, you kind of let them go. It all depends. Because to return fire, to engage, could put a lot of other people at risk. Ricochets, what's in your backfield? There's a lot of questions there. And I'm sure there are going to be some houses that are not going to have the thickest of walls, right? And then, of course, depending on what the criminals may or may not have, it could go through, obviously, windows, but then depending, potentially doors, etc., etc. Of course, that depends on if the criminals actually shot at the police. Obviously, if the criminals didn't shoot at the police, but they were criminals within the line of fire, then there's that question. And then, of course, if there were no criminals at all, as one claim has made, what's going on? There's not a lot of scenarios where this shooting could probably be considered justifiable. There are many more where it could be seen as reckless. Now the question is, who watches the watchers, right? In something like this. Because we have the PCA, but the PCA, like I said, they take complaints. They mistreated me. They were rude and they did not follow procedure and they trampled over my rights. But when we get a situation where you have a potential, and the thing is, all shootings should be investigated by somebody within the police, I would hope. I believe it's the Professional Standards Bureau. But then now, who watches the watchers? The watchers themselves? To what extent are we willing to trust that? Now, granted, that is usually how it goes. You have a bureau or division in a police service that does self-policing. Or you have, I don't know if this exists, but I would imagine it will exist in some parts of the world, an external agency. But it still, to some extent, comes from within, right? Whether it's within the police service or within the country. Because this has caused one opposition candidate, Wayne Sturge, to bring up the question, you know, about corrupt police and who is policing them. Now, it seems as though he kind of left a suggestion hanging, basically saying, we need, I want to get the correct quote here, because he's pointing out, you know, why are so many police officers before the courts? Why are so many members of our protective services before the courts? To some extent, it's true. It doesn't have to be a large number for it to be too many. And he said, you know, it only took an ounce of common sense to know why there were so many unsolved assassinations. And he did say, while most police officers, in his opinion, are well-intentioned, hardworking, and honest, there is an unacceptable percentile of police officers who are facilitating criminal conduct, facilitating criminal gangs, and providing support. Now, in this situation, I don't necessarily think it's police corruption as where we would expect to go, like the worst of the worst. Yeah, they're in league with the criminals and blah, 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 blah. No, this case more sounds like officers doing something reckless and stupid. But now how do we clean this up? Because it seems as though there are levels to this. There are those who are probably very corrupt in league with criminals. Then there are those who, well, they do little favors for friends, and it's not big corruption, but it's still kind of breaking the rules. And then there are people in between that are careless, reckless, do foolish things, and make bad mistakes, and then, you know, try and cover it up. And his solution, which, like I said, it's open-ended, so it's not really complete. He said there needs to be people with no connection to local police officers in charge of rooting out rogue officers. Now, what exactly does that mean? Does that mean you're recruiting people from who knows where? If they have no connection to the police, then they can't go through the police academy, which right now, do we have a special separate bureau trained by foreign instructors? Do we hire foreign agents to be those investigators? To some extent, I think I prefer him leaving it open-ended, because perhaps this might be a very interesting question. What will we be willing to accept? What do we think is necessary? Where's the compromise in the middle, if one could be found? Because we have a state of emergency, and one of the things that Mr. Sturge points out is that it doesn't seem to be that effective. And the problem is, ultimately, I think we can't say if the SOE is effective now or not. A lot of it depends on the 100 or so actually arrested criminals. What happens with them? How many guns we get off the street over the course of the 3-month period? But as of right now, day 22 of the SOE, by day 21, there were 19 murders. That's almost 1 murder a day. It's not the heights of 60 a month, but when we have high murder rates, some months we get twice a day, and some we just get, you know, in the 30s. It's not really arresting or suppressing the murder rates I would like to see, that I could say it's a positive indicator. Initially, it was there, but now it seems as though the criminals have figured out the fact that, look, apparently we don't need to have any extra concern. It did not help that one of the first, if not the first murder of the year was such a high-profile situation. All right. In other news, interesting developments happening in the realm of politics. Just a small continuation of the story, not necessarily a big update yet, depending on who you are, I would imagine. Because Digicel West, the seat that Dr. Keith Rowley will essentially vacate for the next election, that is going through the process of selecting his successor. And Hans Devines, I believe he has something like 12 party groups supporting his nomination, with 2 party groups supporting a newcomer to the race, Miss Bethelmy. And that leaves Dr. Emery Brown, no party group supporting him for the Digicel West seat, and he has essentially dropped out of the race. Minister of Foreign Affairs, Dr. Brown. So, of course, the first question is, what's going to happen with Dr. Brown? There are many other seats that are vacant for different well, not many, a couple other seats that are vacant for different reasons. Laventille East, of course, the incumbent there, he is claiming a family situation despite the fact that his constituents do not want to see him go, and I found that to be quite touching that they had such confidence and appreciation for him that they voiced it so strongly. And of course, there is the unfortunately deceased Lisa Morris Jr., and someone, they have to figure out what they're going to do with that seat. So, there is potential for Dr. Brown to still be an MP moving forward. It kind of all depends on how the politics unfurls. It's interesting that well, okay, let me just say with Dr. Brown. Perhaps one could argue maybe it might be better for him to just hold strain and not push too hard, because depending right now, the feeling that we're getting from certain constituencies is they are rarely being outspoken with who they want and who they don't want. And it's not a case about people being unpopular why they don't want them, but rather it's a case where, including this whole situation with who's going to succeed Dr. Keith Rowley as Prime Minister, where you had people who they supported Penelope Beckles, and it wasn't that they disliked or hated Stuart Young, it was just that they wanted to support the person who they had confidence in, regardless of whether or not they had confidence in the other people. So, and also there's a bit of a youth movement, but Dr. Brown is not, I would argue, not necessarily that old. But this might be one of those things where, and this gets me to the next point, it's interesting to see the PNM. I don't know to what extent this is the plans of the party executive and the leadership, right? Because one could argue Dr. Brown is not going to put his name out there unless he knows that it's cool with everybody involved. That's one of the things in at least our politics, if not others, people tend to not force their way through, because then you upset people and you tend to not get the support of your peers in whatever your endeavors are. So at least on the surface, it appears as though the party groups and the individual members, their voices are being heard in this process outside of the political leadership position, because you don't know how that's going to unfold, right? We have to wait and see how that is done before we could say how it's going to be. Right now, seems as though they're kind of afraid of that. And I guess rightfully so, because look at the nominations for the various posts. Hans Devines, as I said, he is the front runner right now for Digicel West. I'm not too sure to what extent he was part of the plans of the executive. Now, maybe he was, or maybe the executive kind of acknowledged, it's not that we have plans, we're fine with this group of people, any one of them being voted in, right? We don't have an issue with it. Let it go. But at least right now, ironically, it gives the PNM, and I said this before, a couple years ago, could be as long as 3 years ago, that the PNM, I don't know if I said it this way, but I'll say it this way, they appear to be more democratic than their competition. Right? Maybe they are more democratic than their competition with regards to how they handle internal processes and how others handle their internal processes. Because I know of a situation while Mr. Manning was still in power where the person he endorsed for an internal position didn't win. And that was one of the things that took with me. But that administration is not necessarily this administration, but then again, the party machine is the same, one way or the other, for better or worse. That said, we still have questions with regards to that political leadership question. We'll end here before the break. The situation with the UE, the UE staff protests has now, I guess you could say, hit a practical snag, because I didn't necessarily have all of the consequences. Ironically, despite the fact that I am somewhat of a current tertiary education student, I didn't necessarily think through all of the potential variables that's affecting the students, but I did know that ultimately, it's difficult for the staff union to say, because it's more than just lecturers, it's also people like the librarians and administrators and stuff like that, from what I understand, protesting their wages. And let me just say this again, I find it's kind of crazy that it's 2025 and they are looking to negotiate for wage increases for 2015 to 2017. There's still 2018 till 2024, and that's the back pay stuff. And then there's what's going on with 2025. I don't know if they did it. Maybe they did it, or maybe they didn't. I don't know. But anyway, I said before that at the end of the day, it's kind of hard for me not to see that the students are being held for ransom. And the lecturers were basically trying to say, look, we'll continue to teach. We're just not giving out grades. But now the student union is now caught between a rock and a hard place, because apparently they're trying to encourage the students not to boycott classes. And the reason why they're trying to tell their members, the students of UE, not to boycott classes or not to stay away from classes is that if you have done tertiary education, or you have your kids or nephews or nieces, what have you, that has done tertiary education, one of the obvious things is that there are certain classes that come up once a year that you need to graduate. All you need to happen is just to miss the window of that one class and you are set back by a year. That's it. You don't need multiple classes. There's usually not any sort of facility to get that one class back up so you do not have to wait a whole year. That's how it goes, right? So I understand where the student guild is coming from, the student guild. The problem is, one of the issues is the fact that without grades, then nobody knows if they met the prerequisites to go forward, because a lot of courses, particularly in the second and third year, have prerequisites in the first year, right? Or third year might have prerequisites in the second year, depending. So without the grades of the prerequisite courses, for those courses at least, and those courses kind of tend to be, to some extent, unavoidable, right? Because they're that important. That's why they have prerequisites. And you can't avoid them. You need them. Otherwise, students would just not take them depending, unless they really, really want to do that course. So if the grades are being withheld and the semester is starting and I don't know what my grade is, I don't know if I qualify. If I don't know if I qualify, I don't know if I could sign up. And if I can't sign up, then I can't be taught. And then actually, the statement of Wigot, I'll just say it that way, of we continue to teach, that's cute. But what about those students who, depending, unless some administrative workaround happens, and then to some extent there's also going to be timetable issues probably, right? And then depending if that impacts performance and academic grades and et cetera, but we'll need all of that. Otherwise, the situation does not have an easy and obvious solution that is easily workable and seamless and painless to implement. And again, it goes back to, it seems as though the lecturers, and then also the students are complaining we have no library services. So you can continue to teach, but if we have no library services, what? It's a service that is supposed to be provided for as part of the fees that is being paid, whether by GATE or in some cases, like if I was there, I would be paying because my current bachelor's that I was pursuing before this show, I was paying for. So, yeah, I really have a hard time looking at the UE Union and not saying, listen, what did I say before? Be upfront with the students and let them know, you see, this semester we're going to protest. You could go through at your own peril. But even with that, to some extent, it's holding the students, you know, at ransom. They're the leverage, right? But it's a bad kind of leverage because no matter what, the students are either going to be delayed or going to be inconvenienced to the point where they may decide, why am I going to bother? This is 2025. There are already corners of the world that are looking at university education and discounting its necessity, its legitimacy, its utility. The last thing UE wants is any sort of long-term damage to the validity of its education. Because at a time when the government does not have money to throw around, there are a lot of other things, I would argue, that should get government money before university lecturers. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I know that's not what you want to hear, but there are a lot of private sector people who are basically saying pay raise. What pay raise? Granted, if their salary to cost of living is bad in a practical way, then that's different. But notice how nobody ever really gives that kind of an argument, right? So there are other things that need money. The police need more money. Education from the primary and secondary level needs more money. Ministry of Health and all of our public health services need more money. Granted, they also need to be done in a more efficient, less wasteful manner. But you understand? Meanwhile, if the students are turned off, well, this is the funny thing about GATE dollars. You still need students to access GATE for GATE to authorize funds. So even if it's not your money, the students might say, hey, maybe I should go to a different institution that doesn't have this drama. Maybe I should go away. Or maybe I should get work experience. Because depending on the field that I want to get into, it might be more practical if the tertiary education is too difficult. I will leave that there. Let's take a break. When we come back, hopefully we will have our media ambassador. Stay tuned. This is Talking About a WESN. We'll be right back after this.
The best for your baby is at thebesttoys.com. From the best strollers, car seats, baby carriers, high chairs, booster seats, rockers, jumpers and bouncers, walkers, baby blankets, feeding accessories, bathtubs. Visit us in-store at Forces Flagship McLean. Shop online now at thebesttoys.com. Order via call or WhatsApp at 332-BABY. And remember, we have the best toys at the best prices.
Knowing how to tell authentic is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Find it, match it, search it. Step 1. Find the style number on the tag. Step 2. Match the style number inside the jersey with the number on the tag. Step 3. Search it. A quick Google search of the style number will verify the jersey is authentic when the search results match the jersey being searched. Don't be fooled by counterfeit jerseys. Before you buy, remember to find it, match it, search it.
Fan Zone, 2 locations nationwide. Center City Mall, Chaguanas and Movie Town, Port of Spain. Nationwide delivery available. Simon's Musical Supplies Limited. We are the specialist in new and used musical instruments, carrying top brands like Yamaha, Pearl River pianos, Meinl and Sabian cymbals, Remo and Evans drumheads and Fender guitars, just to name a few. Also a wide assortment of music books, pan and accessories. At Simon's, we service what we sell. Trust the leader. Call us now at 625-6412 or visit us at 20 Board Street, Port of Spain.
Give us a call at 235-5479.
The Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
Where good private health care is affordable.
Transform your home with PCU Plus. From stylish furniture to the latest appliances, we have everything you need to create your perfect space. At PCU Plus, we offer fair prices and affordable financing options that are cheaper than hire purchase agreements. With convenient locations in San Fernando, Tobago, Arima, and our lifestyle showroom in Barataria, you're never far from the best deals. Visit PCU Plus today and discover why we're the top choice for quality furniture and appliances. PCU Plus. Quality you trust, prices you'll love. Visit one of our locations or find us online to start transforming your home today.
Hello there and welcome to AM Prime on WESN Content Capital. Before we even start this repatriation and reintegration process, we've already failed, or are we doomed to fail?
You've got to invest in the institutions that you've established to carry out those sorts of core functions.
We now get into the regional updates to give you an understanding of what's happening across our neighboring islands.
We have available a number of films that are worth showing.
So it was day one when the French Revolution started to develop the concept of universal human rights.
What happened this time is unprecedented. It's one of the largest terrorist attacks in history.
Let's welcome Carl to the program. Carl is over there next to himself. Hello, Carl.
Silky anteater or pygmy anteater, and we have two of the three species of anteaters right here.
This is Face of Sports, WESN Content Capital. How you felt about the kiss on the lip?
That's the business. I'm nothing to do with that.
I find that was distasteful.
The national senior team, whether you like it or not, that is the model for all other teams to follow.
I'm assuming that the regional requirement may be a much stricter requirement.
This is not about Pro League and Super League. This is a league run by the Normalization Committee that I'm responsible for.
Nobody expected FIFA to fund this arrangement.
If we don't get a professional attitude towards this, we are doomed for failure.
You break the balance, trip the leg, control the body.
They ain't gonna stand put forever.
Why you want the Chiefs to lose so? Why you want the Chiefs to lose so?
They already have two. Lamar don't
Why?
have.
You're jealous because you know the Chiefs getting closer to the Patriots. Let's go to the last part.
No,
of this game.
no.
Let's go to the last part.
Her voice has mesmerized us for years.
And now, in a rare treat for music fans,
Shakuntala and Friends in concert, featuring Shakuntala Jangbahadur. Singing sensation Deval Chaitlal, brilliant musician Dr. Shivanan Maharaj, master flautist and saxophonist Narendra Maharaj, with music from Shiv Sangeet Orchestra, Shakuntala and Friends in concert.
Shakuntala.
And we're back here on talking about the WSND Content Capital Show. Michael Small here with our TTPS Media Ambassador, Acting ASP, Christopher Arun. I almost said Ashraf Arun. I'm so sorry. I apologize. Good morning. Good morning.
Morning. How everything?
Everything is all right.
Morning to your viewers. So how was your weekend?
I was home.
Right.
I was home.
Okay. So like I was telling you before, we took any pan on the avenue. Well, not on the avenue.
Not on the avenue.
On Park Street.
Exactly.
By Victoria Square.
That's not the avenue.
Yeah. I had two friends.
You're like those town people that say everything passing like south.
Yeah. So opposite now. So yeah, it was nice. The venue was magnificent. They were foreigners. They were both pilots from the States, and they work with an international company. So they wanted to see the culture and whatnot. So I took them to Pan, and they loved it. I was shocked because I'm not a Pan enthusiast, but I took them and they were into it. So one was originally from Barbados and the other one from Dominican Republic.
Oh, okay.
But they will both live and work in the States, and they really enjoyed it. They talk about the Brooklyn Carnival for Labor Day, and as opposed to Trinidad, and they found it was more palatable in Trinidad. They found that it was really less wild. That's the
really?
Yes, I was shocked to hear that. But
I'm kind of shocked to hear that
yeah,
too.
maybe they haven't experienced the proper carnival, but they're coming back for carnival based on the interactions, and they really applauded the how everything was put together and the cleanliness of everything and whatnot.
I think it's something to do with when we go abroad and we see foreign landmarks, it's all fresh and exciting to us. Yeah. Whereas local stuff is, it is what it is. So
when they looked at the avenue, because we drove on the avenue first, and they loved the lights and how it was. They were actually amazed. It was like, what are those? And I was like, oh, the solar lights and they're pretty up the area and whatnot.
I mean, the lights weren't a bad addition to the avenue.
I think
it's what I believe is clay tiles on the sidewalk that I have an issue with. Because I think the last time that I walked on those tiles and it was wet, it was about as slippery as I feared.
Okay.
It's not as slippery as some of the worst tiles that I've had to be on, but we're on the sidewalk, if you know what I mean, right? Like, the sidewalk, the concrete has a little bit of granularity for a reason, right?
Yeah.
So
I did my beats on the avenue on foot patrol on the avenue. That was 20 years ago. So.
Right.
And it was good. It was the surface was okay. I haven't been on the avenue on foot patrol in a while.
There was a lot of money
drive
spent
on the
to put,
avenue.
I don't know why we redid. I mean, it looks nice, but it also looks impractical. There's a reason why New York doesn't have a lot of clay tiles or anything like that on its sidewalks. Now, with that said, I mean, it was always good to hear the positive side of things.
They loved it. They loved the food, everything.
But now, let's go to the meat of the matter.
Of course. Well, we at the TTPS, we're looking at the safety of our citizens during this carnival period, of course, during the SOE. We want to again implore people to continue to cooperate with the officers on the field, on the ground, as they endeavor to do their functions, their duties, the roadblocks, the stop and searches, the ticketing, the whatever. If they stop you and ask you for your credentials and your driver's permit and insurance and whatnot, be polite and respond to the officer as well. So far, we have not had any major complaints from members of the public about the SOE and the officers' behavior. Maybe the officers are better behaved these days, I don't know, but they have always been.
Well, there was a shooting that has some, I guess you could say the community involved.
Right.
They have issues.
Well, anytime you have,
yeah.
Unfortunately, if you have any loss of life during a police shooting, I mean, the community especially would feel some sort of, how to put it, they would feel victimized to some extent.
Right.
Yeah, and they would want the best investigation to ensure that the police was not fault here. But in any shootout between criminals and police, you have the potential for loss of life.
Yes, that's the thing.
Unfortunately, yes, the young lady did lose her life.
There is a scenario, a version of events where the shooting by the police was justifiable. This is whether or not the bullet that struck her was from an officer, right?
There's no confirmation that
the
shooting occurred from the police end as opposed to the criminals end that killed the young lady.
Now, of course, this was one incident, and it was apparently part of an active investigation, but one of the other things with Carnival is there is, I guess you could say, a larger demand because there's a report that there might be more fetes taking place this year than last year. Is there any concern that, I mean, first of all, police would have to provide a certain amount of presence just normally?
Well, we will have, especially with the traffic branch and the district patrols in and around Port of Spain, over the fetes happening, you will have the breathalyzer teams coming out and issuing tickets, or you can be, well, especially if you breach the limit, you would be arrested for driving under the influence of alcohol. So they would be out a lot more now, especially during the carnival period, especially in the evening times after the fetes. And, you know, this is our warning to citizens. If you're going to the fetes, if you're going to Lime, if you're going to hang out anywhere, a bar anywhere, you're having alcohol, do not drive. Have your designated driver. Even if you're operating, even if you have a firearm, the law prohibits that you have a lawful firearm and drink alcohol. You cannot be intoxicated whilst being the holder of a firearm. Lodge it at the nearest police station. You can park by the nearest police station if you want to. And hopefully you take a Uber or some sort of transport back home.
Yeah, because I guess this is one of those things where to what extent do you really need to drink to have fun? Apparently, there was a report last week, we drink more now. I don't know if it's because of stress, right? This might be separate to Carnival, right? Now, granted, the statistics, I think the survey or the study, it was more like more people drink on a certain basis rather than we are literally whoever drinks more alcohol. But it's just, because for road safety, I think one of the things we need to understand too is some people, they're not going to a fete in Woodbrook and live in Woodbrook.
No.
They live maybe
miles away.
Some of them might live in the areas around Port of Spain, and then others will be outside of Port of Spain, and then it's a crapshoot as to how far. It could be all the way back down south.
And then you see the accidents, fatal accidents, especially on the highways, where people run off the road where they may fall asleep, being intoxicated, they lose control of the vehicle, and then you have the fatalities.
Of course,
serious injury.
There are certain parts, you know, with the highway going into Digger Martin, around the Savannah, ironically, right by Queen's Hall there, coming out of Cascade, it seems like people want to speed coming round the bend by President's House.
Right, and then if the roadway is wet, you can easily lose control. I remember losing control of a vehicle at 5 kilometers an hour because the roadway was wet and it was a light vehicle. And it started to, you know, dance on the roadway.
Actually, something similar happened to me. I wasn't moving that fast, but it was fast enough, and the tire locked up, and I just, on the Savannah. And the thing is, this is a funny dry season because I think, as I was speaking to a friend of mine, you know, basically, he had rain somewhere in the east, and there was also rain in Port of Spain at the same time.
I think coming up to the end of 2024, the forecast was that we'll have a wetter, dry season than usual. So.
Right, which... Thank goodness for that because we were concerned that it had been a drier than normal dry season. That's what we had, I think, last year. So,
other things we want to look at, Sean, especially with persons going to parties and fetes and whatnot, especially with young ladies, young women. We've noticed that there are a lot of young women out there in the clubs, in the fetes. Continue to stay in your groups. You know, don't meet and leave with somebody you just met. That's dangerous. You don't know the person. You went into a group. Don't leave your group to go somewhere else with that person. Continue to stay in your groups. Continue to practice safety. A lot of you have to be careful when you're having your drinks. Ensure that it's open in front of you. Ensure that you consume it one time, or ensure that it's always within your view, because there are people out there perpetrating crimes against young women, where they may spike their drinks and whatnot. So. Especially with the young women, and be very careful when you're partying. Party in your groups and move in your groups.
Well, I even remember the story about when my brother, you know, who is a few years older than me, when he went to his first party, you know, our father even told him, you know, hey, if you put your beer down, leave it. Go buy a new beer. Don't get a new beer. Don't even bother drinking that again. So to some extent, even for young men, is it safe to say that don't make the assumption?
Correct, yeah. It can happen. It can happen. We've seen it in the past. What we've observed too is with parents. Some parents actually go to they wait outside. So they park them outside and their children go into the club or the fete or wherever and they pick them up after. So that's very responsible.
Yeah.
So you could practice that as well as parents.
But to some extent, that and all does not necessarily remove the danger of somebody trying something within the club.
Of course.
So I guess it kind of goes back to the fact that, look, a whole group of young people or middle-aged people or whoever, it's probably not a good idea for everybody to get stone-faced drunk.
Yeah, but when we look at the stats and we look at the victimization of who it is, the victimology, it's mostly young women that the crimes are perpetrated against. It's not saying that you are disbarred from being a victim as an elderly person. There are people out there who want to take advantage of you. Of course, we all know that. So let's practice it as much as we can. As I always say, and we say in ICNTT, let's make it harder for the criminals to be effective against us.
But what I was getting at is, even if you're all going to be picked up,
yeah,
it's probably a good idea if you have a couple of the friends in the group not really drinking that much, so there'll always be somebody in the party that has their wits about them.
And even though groups tend to want to overdo it sometimes, you keep the lines of communication open. As you said, you're in a group, some people might drink as much as others. You have devices now where you could, like a mobile device, call somebody, text somebody, let them know you've arrived, that you're leaving, you're on your way.
Right.
This is the taxi I took, this is the driver's name. Information that could be useful.
One of the things, I guess, I find it interesting, like say with home security, they have this thing, or certain aspects of security, because we've had this conversation before, and I'm like, when I come home, I'm not always comfortable. Some people might say, oh gosh, Topia was just, it's in the middle of the day, go in your house, and I'm like, I think I'd rather be inconvenienced, right, than take risks. Any concern that I guess sometimes some people, like they want to prove that they're a big man or woman at a party, so they do dumb nonsense like drinking before driving, or I could hang out with who I want to, and perhaps we should send the message, listen, don't try to prove anything to anybody here by taking risks just because you want to prove yourself to be big, because you make the mistake and all it takes is one, and that's the end of your story.
Yeah, like we said before, Trinidadians tend to be very trusting people and very jovial and free, carefree in how they operate. So, it's not the 80s and the 90s like it used to be. We're in a new era. You're seeing more crimes being perpetrated against persons, and you're taking a lot of risk out there when and you're becoming a victim by practicing these methods of how you carry about yourself now. So you want to lime, you want to drink more, you want to party more. Make sure you have you take into consider those risk factors. Try as much as possible to avoid taking those risks like you talk about. So you have, as I said, the communication, lime in groups, party in groups. Try to avoid consuming alcohol beyond your reasonable thinking and that you can withstand. And once you drink, don't drive. Make arrangements, make proper arrangements so that you can leave and move around. Try not to
take the party into the car.
Yeah.
Because the driver could be sober and then distracted, and then you get...
And be sure that the TPS will be out there. And once you give them the reasonable cause to check you for a breathalyzer, they will check you because you're going to be drinking. You might be holding the drink. You might have the drink open in your vehicle.
Yeah.
That gives them the reasonable cause. You might have the behavior of somebody who is intoxicated. They might smell the alcohol in your breath. And these are all reasonable causes. A lot of jurisdictions might call it probable cause. You're giving the officers reasonable cause to administer breathalyzer, and they would administer as much breathalyzer as possible because we have teams of officers out there who would be administering breathalyzers.
And I guess probably would be a good idea, obviously, if you're designated driver with a drink in your hand while driving.
He will be.
But let's just, let's just assume designated driver, all good. Don't have a whole set of open drinks in the car and you drive home. It's kind of hard.
Yeah.
The police are going to kind of look at us like, are we really going to buy that the driver is sober? No, we have to stop you and at the very least test the driver.
Yeah, and now with the freedom to have smoke marijuana and then operate a vehicle is something that we'll be looking at as well. So, you know, you have to be careful because alcohol and drugs don't always mix and might affect everybody
some
differently.
People, you know, every now and then at the party, you smell the thing.
People, I want to use the word trip off. I have seen people trip off having alcohol and narcotics.
Oh.
Yeah. So, yeah. I remember one time I was working for Carnival in St. Clair, and a guy came in and he admitted that he just had some drugs. He said, in a few minutes, I'm going to be out of it. And you need you to start to call people for me. And we had to call in an ambulance and whatnot because he had alcohol and drugs and he was about
this is not just marijuana. We're talking
no, it was some
ecstasy.
It was some serious narcotics and he hadn't had any on him, but he came into the station and he was like, I just had some narcotics. I'm going to pass out. I'm going to be tripping off. I need some assistance. And we called the ambulance and we called his family.
I mean, as you brought it up, that's also one of the other things. Of course, I don't know to what extent it's true now, but at some point it was a case of, well, you know, I need to rebel and be more edgier than the previous generation. So alcohol isn't enough. Marijuana is not enough. Ecstasy. Yeah. And in the case of once you get to that point now, there's some risk with regards to marijuana as well. It could be laced with stuff. Yeah. But ecstasy especially, it's a pill that you don't know exactly what it is.
Right, and then we see the introduction of Molly and these other narcotics coming into the market.
But then there's always a chance of, well, let's just say, for argument's sake, you're fine with the drug, even though that's very much something that you can't take for granted, right? Yeah. You never know what it actually is that you're taking, and it could be something very dangerous.
And we're seeing...
to end your life immediately.
Yeah, and now we're seeing with children and young adults that they are being perpetrated more against and victimized concerning narcotics because they're going to parties and they're all trying out, they're experimenting with these drugs and they don't know how it's going to affect them.
Right.
And they hallucinate and they trip off, as I said. And, you know, we want persons to be very careful when you use, trying these drugs for the first time or experimenting. It's illegal. If you're held with it, you're going to get a charge. And that's the least of your problems because you do not know what's going to happen to you, how you're going to be victimized by persons if it is that you're hallucinating and whatnot.
Yeah, that's the thing. If you're lucky, it wouldn't cause your body to have an adverse reaction and kill you on the spot. Yeah. And then you're left vulnerable.
And we've had victims of sexual offenses, victims of sexual assaults, who don't know how it happened.
And this is while you're still in a fete or a club?
Yeah.
Right, so they don't have to take you out.
No, they don't have to take you out. They go in a corner. They perpetrate their crime against you. You wake up the next day or you wake up some hours after and you know something has happened to you.
But you don't even have memory to know what happened.
You don't have memory. You don't know the person. You don't know how it happened. You don't know. We take you for medical. We hopefully the medical intervention works to help prevent any STDs and whatnot. Because we have the medicine to stop or prevent it from continuing.
It's not the 1980s anymore, folks. I mean, I guess that really just sums it up right there, right? Although some of this has been happening in the last 20 to 30 years, I guess it's true. The old-time days and the old-time ways, I and all look back Arun, at the 1980s when I was but a wee lad. Yeah. And things were more beautiful then.
It was safer. It was safer. We didn't have fences around homes. You could have walked from yard to yard and go to wherever you wanted to go.
Well, my neighborhood always had walls, I must admit. But there was more freedom. Openness. Yeah, the walls were lower. Yeah. It was easier to go from near. The gate was some basic thing that wasn't going to stop any determined intruder. And now it's all security, totally whatever, and razor wire and cameras and lights and. Yeah.
But I mean, and we could take the precautions we need to take. We could do that as individuals. We could take those precautions, so the police don't have to fight the crime for you.
The sad part of it, though, is the fact that all of this is contributing to a higher cost of living. Huh? Yeah. That's one. But what would you rather do? Spend some money now on security, or spend a lot of money having to replace valuables of your life? Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll open the phone line. Stay tuned to talk about the WSN content capital. We'll be right back after this.
Bill and Ruth fell in love with the Benjamin Moore color Dry Sage, but they tried to match it using another brand's paint.
I mean, it's close enough.
Almost identical, really. Yeah, there it is.
Never trust another paint to be a Benjamin Moore color.
Transform your home with PCU Plus. From stylish furniture to the latest appliances, we have everything you need to create your perfect space. At PCU Plus, we offer fair prices and affordable financing options that are cheaper than hire purchase agreements. With convenient locations in San Fernando, Tobago, Arima, and our lifestyle showroom in Barataria, you're never far from the best deals. Visit PCU Plus today and discover why we're the top choice for quality furniture and appliances. PCU Plus. Quality you trust, prices you'll love. Visit one of our locations or find us online to start transforming your home today.
Simon's Musical Supplies Limited. We are the specialist in new and used musical instruments, carrying top brands like Yamaha, Pearl River pianos, vinyl and Sabian cymbals, Remo and Evans drumheads and Fender guitars, just to name a few. Also a wide assortment of music books, pan and accessories. At Simon's, we service what we sell. Trust the leader. Call us now at 625-6412 or visit us at 20 Board Street, Port of Spain. FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
I'm back here on Talking About WSN, the Content Capital Show. Michael Small with ASP Arun joining me as usual. There's a lot of things that might seem obvious when you sit down and talk about it, but it's things that people need to hear, because when you're out and you have a little bit of alcohol, kind of, you know, plying the judgment there a little bit, making it less strict, maybe having reinforcement messages to encourage you not to give in to certain temptations might be good for you, or at the very least, you could try to impart that on your grandchildren, your children, what have you. Of course, sometimes they don't necessarily want to hear Tanti with, you know, yes, I know I'm a big woman, I know what I'm doing. It's like, it's just one of those things, right?
Yeah, young people tend not to want to hear, and they tend to know everything, apparently.
This is the catch. The catch is sometimes it is better for them to make their mistakes.
Sometimes.
But the severity of the mistake is what kind of makes it very uncomfortable, right?
Yeah. Sometimes there's a learning experience behind some mistakes. And then there are consequences beyond the learning that for others.
Right, you have to survive the mistake to learn from it. That's especially like with traffic accidents.
Yeah, you don't want to be involved in a serious accident where you lose the limo life. And you know, you have to spend the rest of your life trying to figure out how you're going to go about surviving that.
Worse yet, the drunk driver tends to be the survivor in the scenario.
That's so weird.
How? Yeah. I think maybe because he's limp. I don't know what it is.
I saw it happen already.
So we have Sanford on the line. Good morning, caller. You're on the air.
Good morning, Sean.
Morning.
Morning, good evening.
ESP, I have two questions for you. You could probably answer them once I finish. I wouldn't be long. Firstly, didn't they pass a law that states that hello?
If you could just boost the audio on our end, maybe. But continue, Mr. San Fernando. Just start over again for the ASP to hear.
Okay, hear me now, ASP?
Yeah.
Yes. Didn't they pass a law that states that it is now illegal to have an open bottle of alcohol within the cabin of a vehicle?
No.
No?
No, you could have alcohol in your vehicle.
Open?
Open, yeah.
Open?
Yeah.
But
but what it does, it gives the officer a reasonable cause to stop you and administer breathalyzer.
If you do,
I know, but I thought that
in the States it's illegal in the US.
No, in Trinidad, I remember them bringing that I would have to check on it again, but I remember them bringing a law stating that it was illegal to have an open bottle of alcohol within the cabin of a vehicle.
No, I could check it for you, but no.
Check it for me, please. The other
No,
thing
because
is,
having an open bottle of alcohol doesn't mean there isn't a separate ticket for that. There isn't a separate charge for it. As far as I could double check it, but
please.
doesn't mean you're drinking it.
Yeah, I know, but it was a charge. I'm pretty certain about that.
Well,
and the other question I have is,
yeah.
How to put this? When the outgoing Prime Minister decided to increase drug trafficking in the country by decriminalizing marijuana and hoist that on the population, the police service has been seizing over the last couple of years. You see, they have been seizing large quantities of marijuana with all these different packaging and stuff. I'm saying the police service have been seizing marijuana with these different areas and different packaging on these marijuana. Does the police service have a archive where they actually a database where when they seize these marijuana, they do testing on each batch of this marijuana and for the components, see what THC levels, what synthetics they have in them? Is there a database like this in the service?
No, not that I'm aware of. But what we do when we seize narcotics is that we submit it to forensics, and the forensic scientific officers they would break it down and they would give you the ingredients and whatnot, and they would confirm whether it's narcotics, including marijuana, and they would detail in their report the different types of chemicals and the different makeup of the narcotics, including marijuana. In terms of the THC, I've never seen any data on that.
Okay, but they have, so the police service does have some sort of scientific information on marijuana that they see.
Yeah, based on what was submitted to Forensic Science Center. So each package is examined and submitted to forensics, and forensics does the further examination.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, caller. Now, I did a quick search. There's a wonderful new feature, and this is one of the things with AI that we need to understand. It ain't perfect, not by a long shot. So you really need to still have the skills to backstop it.
Yeah.
Because I did a search. According to the AI-generated response, it is illegal. The problem is the source. Right. The problem is the sources are either articles that say that it was proposed, or in one case, it was the Texas Penal Code.
Yeah, so
right?
No, in other jurisdictions, it's illegal. You can't have an open bottle of alcohol. In Trinidad, you could walk on the streets without an open bottle of alcohol. Yeah.
Oh boy, are we maybe a little too careful.
In other jurisdictions, you can't actually consume alcohol in public.
Yeah, and so, of course, the key is, in your mind, there's no ticketable offense for this, so it can't be illegal. Otherwise, that would be one of the worst written laws ever if that was the case, right?
Trinidad, we have a lot of freedoms that other countries don't have, but I've never seen any law. Maybe my ignorance, my negligence, and I'll double check that with my legal officer.
Yeah, but it seems as though that is. I try to put Trinidad in the search so that it would exclude.
Yeah.
But when you could check the sources for why it generated the overview. And with regards to the specific statements, the main source is Penal Code Chapter 49, intoxication, blah, 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 Texas statutes.
Because you'll have to weigh, okay, what is the difference between, let me say, an alcoholic beverage in a designated bottle,
right,
that's advertised as alcohol, or a glass of alcohol.
Right.
So then the officer would have to do some kind of experiment.
Yeah, what if it's a water bottle with vodka and it's not sealed?
Yeah.
Or the cap is on it. Oh, that's so much more secure to prevent.
Yeah. So as far as I know.
And at the end of the day, I guess it all comes down to,
I'll double check it.
Is the driver have a blood alcohol level over the legal limit?
So whether or not you have, it just gives the officer reasonable cause to believe that you're intoxicated or you might have had some substance and he needs to brutalize you.
Right. We have Sugar on a Sunday line. Good morning, caller, you're on the air. Morning.
Good day.
A state of emergency that people claim it work, and I don't see how it could work. because according to the government, we had come up about is people attacking people and things like the criminals and what. And I have already pointed out to you on a number of occasions that when this crime started in East Port of Spain, the research showed that it was because of the environment. And the action was put in place to change the environment, where they acquire all the lands up there, they pay the people for the buildings that were unfit, and they leave these things there. And this is what started the problem. Then it went to other parts of Trinidad, right, where squatting was encouraged. And what we need to do is enforce our laws, and we would not need these stupid type of state of emergency. Because if you do that, you have to have your police ready to act. From the time you mentioned it, you started one time, and you go into the places and search them one time. Any questions or comments?
No caller. No. I just to stay, I understand where you're coming from. I still have hope that the SOE for illegal guns would have been like the real, and I guess drugs will also fall into that, right? Yeah. Like that'll be one of the real things. It's like at the end of the day, you know, it's kind of hard to argue, but Your Honor, the way how they seized my illegal gun wasn't legal. Yeah, but it's still illegal gun. Yeah. It's like, you know, you still have a right to it. Yeah, you know what I mean? Yeah. It's like it's still cocaine. You know. Yeah. You know, maybe marijuana, that we might get lawsuits for seizure, well, depending on the amount of marijuana. And of course, there might be some lawsuits with regards to some of the arrests. So those things we'll only know if they're effective enough towards the end. But with regards to the guns and maybe hard drugs, maybe I'm being a bit too idealistic, caller from Shogunas, because you're right. I don't think it solves all the long-term problems, but we do need to try and get the guns off the street. We have Move on the line. Good morning, caller. You're on here.
Yes, good morning, gentlemen.
Morning.
I am glad that Mr. San Fernando made this statement, because quite frankly, I find that not enough people seem to have realized this, or even realized it. When the government decided not to decriminalize marijuana, what they in fact did was increase the price of the drug on the market and created bigger profits for the criminals. And I'm surprised the way.
Caller? Yeah, I hear that.
Surprise.
So usually when you hear that beep, that might mean a disconnect. Maybe he pressed the button on his end. I don't think anybody from our master control would have had any reason to butterfingers that call.
You got the gist of his question, or I didn't get it?
Basically, this is where I think he was going. That essentially we have a system where we decriminalize marijuana, but it's still a profitable criminal product.
Because somebody has to sell it for somebody to buy it. And
So, and I guess that's the thing. We didn't necessarily decriminalize the sale to say, like in Colorado and California.
Yes, it didn't decriminalize the sale. So it's still illegal to sell
and
buy. So it's trafficking. If you buy and sell marijuana, it's trafficking.
So I'm assuming
here. So they decriminalize the ownership
of a small amount and use of a small amount.
And the growing of it,
I'm gonna make an assumption here. One of my issues, and this is after speaking with some of the callers who have issues with the legalization completely. My thing is this: I could see where decriminalization could have had benefits, but it seemed as though we have the worst of both worlds with how we did it. We decriminalize it. We have the negative consequences of making it more freely available to use, and young people may be abusing it. But then on top of that, the criminal aspect of it didn't go away. That's one of the things, like with prohibition of alcohol. So you legalize it again, all of a sudden Al Capone's criminal empire of rum smuggling or alcohol smuggling goes away. But the smuggling of marijuana did not go away. We have St. Augustine, and then we'll get back over so he could clarify. St. Augustine, good morning. Caller, you on here? Morning, caller, you on here?
All right.
We have St. Augustine, and then we'll get back over so he can clarify. Caller, mute your television because there's a delay on the TV.
I'm muted.
Cool.
Yeah, hello, good morning.
Yeah.
I would like to speak to The police officer.
Yes, sir. Good day.
Good morning.
Morning.
I have a situation. Well, how to put it? Two persons own a car, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't registered. It wasn't pass inspection or nothing like that. Well, I didn't sign for it to pass the inspection, and I didn't sign for it to be transferred to the next person's name.
Right.
But the other day, when it was Friday, I saw it driving on the road.
Right.
So what would the next step I should do? What would the next thing?
Well,
carry the certified copy to the license office and explain it to them, or what?
So did you sell the car?
No, I ain't sell it.
So you own the car and somebody's using it without your
No,
permission?
both of us, two persons that own it. Two persons that are jointly owned.
Right.
Right. It hasn't been inspected, that's what you're saying?
Well, I never signed nothing for it to get in. All right, it could be inspected, but the insurance was on both of us' names.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't sign for it. I didn't sign over for it, because if you sign over to change ownership, the two persons had to be at license office, right?
Correct, yeah. You have 7 days.
Right. Yeah, so that never happened. So I see driving on the road.
Yeah, you can report it to licensing.
So the best thing is going to license office.
Yeah, and let them know that your vehicle is being used and you didn't give permission to anybody to use it. And but the other party, you spoke about it being jointly owned. Is it that the other party gave permission for it to be used?
If they ask me?
No, whether or not they ask you, the other party who owns the vehicle, did they give anybody permission to use the vehicle?
I don't know.
Oh, that is what you need to find out, because you said it was joint owned. So therefore you have joint ownership. Therefore both owners can give permission for it to be used.
Yeah, but it was parked up almost a year and a half.
No, I understand. And it may not have insurance,
Right.
and it may not have inspection stickers.
Right.
And yeah, but it would be a registered vehicle on the road.
Would he be liable for those things if it's on the road and it doesn't have?
And he's part
He'll
owner.
he'll be partially liable.
And there's an offense of using a motor vehicle without the owner's consent, or lastly, motor vehicle. So is it that the person who using the vehicle using it without your consent? And if so, you need to make a report to the police.
Without my consent?
Yeah. So then you could go to the police station in your district and make a report that the vehicle has been used without your consent.
Right.
One, you also need to ensure that the other party, the other owner, hasn't given permission for it to be used.
To somebody else?
To somebody else, yeah.
Yes.
Because they have the power to give another person permission to use the vehicle. They may have also gotten insurance. Excuse?
Yes, because it is jointly owned, you both have the power to give permission.
It's like it's like a marital home. Although you may have bought a TV for your home, because you're married, you share ownership now because you're married. Your spouse has ownership over the TV as well. So whoever has, and she has permission, or your spouse has permission, to use and do as she pleases with the television.
And I guess this is a case where you make the report caller so that if there's any legal liability, you will have the report to say, you know, it's...
I understand where you're coming from. I understand. You mean legally, I understand. If anything happens...
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then if it is being used without your consent or the other person's consent, then there is a criminal offense.
Oh,
that's why you have to go to the other person.
Yeah.
That's why I have to go to the police to safeguard myself.
Yeah, you should make a report.
But also consult with the other owner.
Yeah, find out from them if they gave
Because
permission.
if they didn't get permission either, then it's even worse.
Yeah.
Oh, all right. Thanks very much, man.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, we have Mova back on the line with us. Good morning, caller. You're on air. Welcome back, Mova.
Good morning, gentlemen. I'm sorry I didn't say anything yet. Let me just... When, in the future, near future, when people start being more honest, it will be realized that one of the worst decisions this government would have made is decriminalizing marijuana. Because, as I was saying, all it did was increase the profits for the criminals, And it would have made younger people who would not have necessarily interfered with the drug before because they would have been afraid of being arrested. And now they would be using it. And I don't see how that is good for this country. Nonetheless, Sean, I was glad to hear you say that this country, we are really too lenient. We are too lenient on too many things. And this is one of the reasons we are in the mess that we are in. The other thing is, I want to have but Sean, before I ask the officer my last question, I want to just tell you if you can find something out for me. I've been trying to contact ICNTT for weeks now to report 2 streetlight malfunctions, and I can't get through at all. Okay, so maybe you can use your good office and ask what's wrong with ICNTT's phone. But officer, I want to ask you one question. Could you explain to me, please, where in law does it give a bar the right to play music loudly any time of the day or night? Because it has to be in law that can do it. Okay, so please you can tell me where in law that gives them that right. Over.
Yeah, anytime. To play loud music at any time, day or night. Because
there's no prohibition on a bar playing music anytime.
Oh,
You can play, yeah. Once you pay your cut license and and your licenses concerning the bar, you can operate a radio or stereo, whatever. You can play your music. What we have is the EMA police, who polices the level of music using a device. So they come in and they check, and if it's over a particular volume, then they could administer
Does the
summons.
time of day matter with that level?
No.
As far as you're aware, no.
No.
So they can't. They are supposedly not able to cross a certain threshold regardless of the time.
It doesn't matter. The time doesn't matter. But what we expect as police officers, when you make a complaint to, let me say, the station, let me say it's Woodbrook Police Station, that you call and you say, listen, there's a bar, and it's too loud. The officers would try to be, they would converse with the bar owner to be reasonable with his time.
Yeah.
So they might, give him a time
But
frame.
technically, you don't have any official capacity on that level because you don't have the decibel measurement devices either.
No, that's where EMA comes
and
in.
that could be where you have this situation, right?
So there is a law concerning the decibel reading.
Yes.
Right? But you have to.
The average officer doesn't have.
No, they have to come in and read it and whatnot. And to some extent, the officers might use the power of persuasion to have you take off the music for the purpose of peace in the neighborhood, as opposed to having the right to do it.
You don't have a nuisance or anything like that. So
no.
There's no ordinance to say you have the ability to shut it down.
I'll have to clarify that because there has been cases in the past where I've been schooled that an inspector and above could go in and take off the radio and whatnot. But I have to correct that. I have to find out. I want to say something. Yeah, I don't want to say something that I'm not too schooled on.
Right.
But in terms of written law, there's nothing that I've seen where you can just go in and tell the person to take off the radio.
Right.
You try to use the power of persuasion. What the resident can do is that when it's up for their license to be renewed, they can make a complaint to the court, the magistrate, who grants the license.
This is assuming there's a license, but yes, granted.
There normally is, because we do the license. We visit licensed premises and check on the license.
Right. Yes, that is true. Yes.
So there are licenses. But what I'm saying is that the resident who is bothered by the music can go to the district magistrate where the license is passed and make an objection to the license being passed. And I've actually seen it where the magistrate would not have granted the license to the bar owner to operate a bar.
There's another implication there, but I don't want to open that kettle of fish with regards to certain things, because that might actually be a negative in the long run. So I'll leave that alone. We have our last caller, Woodbrook, on the line. Good morning, caller. You on the air?
Good morning to you and to the senior.
Morning.
I want to take up on the issue of the opening and closing hours, because in more ways than one, most of our bar licenses are written any day, any time.
Yeah.
It's one of the few places in the world
right.
where people could buy alcohol and sell alcohol any day, any time. And that is perhaps the crux of our real challenges in this country. I remember at one point the people in St. James
had a situation whereby every night there would be bottle pelting and things like that.
Right.
And the police in St. James got together with the police in the city and fashioned a plan whereby they would say to all bar owners at 11 o'clock, take your last order.
Right.
And at 12 o'clock,
You close.
the police would lock arms and they would come through St. James, closing and making sure that everybody was well on their way.
Right.
That brought an end to that crisis.
Right.
What that represented was law and order. And what we require in Trinidad and Tobago more than anything else, if it is one thing that everyone should pray for and wish for in Trinidad and Tobago, is law and order.
Yeah.
And we may well find that a lot of the things that we are searching for would come automatically.
Yeah.
I rest my case on that matter and say to all those who have ears to hear that on Arapita Avenue in particular, the precedent for fixed opening and closing hours was well established in the magistrate's court. What happened after a certain period and a certain administration is something that we need to investigate and inquire why we have not adhered to fixed opening and closing hours.
Yeah, that went out the window.
Thank you, Roland.
Yeah.
So what we've seen in other jurisdictions, like on a Sunday they don't sell alcohol.
Right.
And they wouldn't dare sell alcohol because they would lose their license. And you have a bit more law and order in those areas.
Yeah.
As opposed to Trinidad where you have, well, I mean, Trinidad, it's not to say that it's out of hand where people having alcohol on a Sunday tends to cause any set of chaos, but there are benefits to rules and regulations when it comes to the consumption of alcohol.
One of the interesting things with Tobago is Sunday night is a heavy party night.
Right.
Long before any sort of idea for that came through in TNT.
Yeah.
But then when you look at tourism, it's like to some extent
it makes sense.
Which is funny because when it was probably instituted, it probably wasn't this way. They were more foreign tourists who were week to week.
Yeah.
But it makes sense, at least in the modern age, in the sense of, and then, essentially, our weekend is really Monday, Tuesday, or somewhere around like that, not Saturday, Sunday. But I guess it speaks to maybe, because I can understand, it's kind of difficult. At some point, somebody's going to challenge any sort of informal or patchwork ruling or whatever to try to put something that isn't written in law.
Yeah, but nothing's wrong with a society having rules and regulations concerning the consumption of alcohol, narcotics, fixed times. These things work to their benefit.
My point is, perhaps what we really need is maybe someone with political will to make things a less loose, right? Because I guess to some extent it's cultural.
Cultural, yeah.
But at what point are we going to say, well, our culture is a little bit irresponsible?
Yeah.
Right? I'm not saying that it is. I'm saying at what point do we want to say that?
Yeah.
Right? Because there are times when, in general, we manage okay. We are responsible enough. But there's always the person that takes things too far.
Yeah.
And then tragedy happens, and then what?
And now you have people knowing their rights, exercising their rights to keep a bar open as long as they want to, and as opposed to the police using the power of persuasion to lock off the bar. I mean,
well, there's the power, right? It's only persuasion. At some point, they're not gonna buy it.
Yeah, the benefit of profit over law and order might excel.
I'll just say this: at least in my experience with me and my friends, we weren't smokers before. The law did not encourage us to become smokers, right? I think there will be people who might experiment.
Yeah.
But experimenters aren't really smokers. To what extent young people now are indexing more on marijuana?
Listen, it's a bigger conversation than what we could sit here and talk about, because there is always the avenue of the black market situation, right, and the underworld situation where persons, so you may not have legalized, or you may not have legalized the use of marijuana, but it will still continue to some extent.
Yeah,
So it's a bigger conversation that I could speak on.
I would argue that and I guess some people it might be unpopular because then private business will start to grow it and what have you.
Yeah.
But that apparently Jamaica exports it and it helps give them some foreign.
Yeah, there are other islands in
right.
the West Indies.
I would say, listen, we either criminalize it again or we open it up. This middle of the pact kind of wanting to straddle both sides of the fence ain't working.
Some people might see a way to make profit from the grow it and export it.
You know what? I think one of the things for foreign exchange, if that's what it is, or that's what I don't know. All right, folks. Thanks to all the callers. Spirited discussion. I'm not too sure if I could help you with TNTech because I would need way more information. That's a whole other kettle of fish. It usually doesn't work if we try to advocate on behalf of anybody. So, caller, I wouldn't recommend you depending on that. And of course, thank you, ASP Arun, for joining me once again and fielding all the questions from the public. And folks, there's a lot, this was actually a very varied and informative segment. Yeah. So I'm very appreciative for you being here and willing to.
Anytime.
Folks, this is talking about the WSND Content Capital. Just want to remind you to make today a good day, as Mr. Shah would always say. Remember your allegiance to each other and to the Republic. It's nice to be nice. So stay safe. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
WESN.
Bill and Ruth fell in love with the Benjamin Moore color Dry Sage, but they tried to match it using another brand's paint.
I mean, it's close enough.
Almost identical, really. Yeah, there it is.
Never trust another paint to be a Benjamin Moore color.
Simon's Musical Supplies Limited. We are the specialist in new and used music